Canyon. Joey Chestnut is continuing his reign as the big hot dog eating champion of the world. Chestnut set a new record at this year's annual Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest at New York's Coney Island yesterday. Chestnut ate 75 hot dogs, including the buns, in 10 minutes, beating his competitor by 33 hot dogs. It's Chestnut's 13th time taking home the mustard yellow belt over the past 14 years. And for USA Radio News, I'm Chris Barnes.
Inspired by our German artisan roots, Süß Caramel has redefined the art of caramel making. Slow crafted, all natural, and preservative free with uncompromising standards. Cooked gently in small batches to create velvety textures and layers of flavor like no other caramel you've ever experienced. It is our sincere hope that you enjoy each Süß Caramel as much as we enjoy making it for you. I'm Tammy Fahey, and I never tire of hearing how much people enjoy my caramels. Please visit SüßCaramel.com to place your order and to see a listing of stores that carry our amazing caramels.
It's 9:06.
The views and opinions of the following show do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
Welcome to Inspiring Hope with Lois Hermann, a leading expert in professional coaching, clinical hypnosis, and energy clearing. Lois is an award-winning author of Chronicles of Hope. She has decades of experience in advanced hypnosis techniques, has conducted highly effective success coaching programs that have helped clients discover ways to achieve success, empower themselves, their families, as well as holistic practitioners to expand their practices. Get ready to be empowered with your host, Lois Hermann.
Good morning and welcome to Inspiring Hope. I am your host, Lois Hermann, and I'm here to inspire you with positive messages and celebrate everyday people who are making a difference in our world. When we focus our thoughts and energies on what we love to do, we create powerful shifts that cause us to be more positive and peaceful. As we lift our energy, we empower everyone around us. If we each do what we can to make small shifts in awareness, from kindness to healthy habits and simple happiness, we create ripples of hope. Join us as catalysts for positive change for our families, our communities, and our world at large. I hope you're inspired by today's show. And happy Independence Day weekend to everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you're enjoying this 4th of July weekend. I know it's a little different this year, but then everything's a little different this year. This is the Shake It Up year. And yet I was able to watch a great show yesterday with wonderful musicians on the Capitol. There was the show up, the music from the Capitol. It was really wonderful. And I did miss attending the little Amherst parade. To me, that's sort of like Mayberry. That's a highlight of our year, going to the Amherst parade and watching the dogs parade and the children and it's just, and the old the men and their muskets, the revolutionary people, and just all kinds of wonderful down-home things. And that's what this is all about, is appreciating the simple things in life. We did get a chance, my husband and I went to visit my daughter and her husband on Lake Ossipee. They have a camp up there. We went up on Tuesday, the day that it finally rained and poured, and we were out on a boat in the rain, and it was fabulous. A little cold, but we were still having a great time. And I think that one of the silver linings in this crazy time is that we are slowing down just a little to enjoy the simple things and to take better care of our health, our life, and the change things. Look at things that we used to take for granted and be more appreciative of, like good friends, good food, working in the garden, or going for a walk in the woods. Now, one of the things I've been doing lately is clearing the clutter and organizing my home for this next phase of life. It really feels good to break out of that old pattern and get ready for this new online virtual presence. My office is coming together nicely and just in time to work on final edits for Chronicles of Hope, the collective. Well, if you've ever written a book, then you know what it's like. The writing is done, but now we're into the formatting, those little minor details of the italics and just organizing the justifications and all the stuff in order to really, I call it putting the icing, putting the decorations, the jimmies on the top. You know, the cake it's already baked. The recipe's all there. We're just polishing it up so that it makes the reading experience much more enjoyable for you. So this has been a good time to really take care of all of those things. And I'm delighted that we've had so many positive reviews from people who have looked at this. And I want to just comment on a gentleman that has touched my life, Dr. Neil Helm. He was nominated for the Nobel Prize for his humanitarian efforts in creating the satellite-based global disaster communications network. So he's a retired CEO and professor of transpersonal psychology at Atlantic University in Virginia Beach. And he said this: Chronicles of Hope brought unity to my psychic consciousness and a spiritual transformation. It not only changed the game, it altered the outcome of the entire championship. The book describes how the ancient ones desired to bring wisdom, sustainability, and unity to our beloved planet and its inhabitants. Regrettably, they are seeing ignorance, environmental decline, and large inequities in the makeup of our societies, largely due to greed, hoarding, and injustice. However, we can all do something to bring about positive change. Read this book. Join the collective. I am delighted. So the book's going to be available on 8/8, save the date. It's going to be available on Amazon for a special $1 rate. So I am delighted to have him be a champion with me. And I have another amazing doctor with me. She's actually in the studio with me. This is a first. We've been doing everything by phone. So the woman that's with me today, formerly the host of a radio show called Health Matters, we're going to focus on a course of creating health with Dr. Heather Tallman Ruhm. And she's offering her book. You're going to talk about your book. And I want everybody to please help me welcome an amazing integrative medicine doctor, Dr. Heather. Welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Lois. What a pleasure to be here on this beautiful Sunday.
It's a little hazy out there, but we're taking it. It's okay, isn't it?
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful weekend and a beautiful time to be alive.
It sure is, isn't it? It's a time of great change.
It is.
But we're seeing the change, and change is good.
Yeah, change is sometimes hard, and finding our own way in that change. And really, I think that the time we're in is really causing a lot of people to reflect on their own role in their own health and in their life and in the life of the world.
Absolutely. It's like the chrysalis. You know, everybody's been in this cocoon, and now we're going through the change and metamorphosis.
Yeah.
And then as we start to come out of that, where will we go?
Yeah. What is it? What is the vision you have for you?
Exactly.
And or your world or your country?
Yes.
What is that vision you have? And I think we've been caught up in others' visions maybe, but now how is it that you want to be part of your own vision? You know, how do you want to help create that vision?
How do you want to show up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about you. What is your background? You've got an interesting background.
Oh, thanks. Well, I hail from Montana. I've lived in New England for quite some time. My husband's from this area, and we've lived quite a few places because, in part, I like to travel and live in places other than my original home. But I also am married to someone who's in the Air Force, or was with the Air Force for over 20 years and then retired. And so that took us a bit around the country as well. So it's been a joy to find new communities and find the gems and jewels of those communities, and sometimes surprising ones, where we've lived from Montana to California, Massachusetts, Alabama, New Mexico. I did my medical school training in New Mexico. Before that, I was at Montana State University. And then between those two, I was a graduate student where I met my husband at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. So I've been on a journey in my academic life to find a way to be in somehow involved in the healing of this planet. And you might think of that as an environmentalist, and I guess in some ways I am. But more than that, I've been drawn to what can we do for humans and what can we do for healing. And I think from the earliest kind of inspirations of that, it's not like I was born into a family of doctors. I don't think we ever had a doctor in the family, as far as I know, maybe in the distant past. But the thing that really moved me, I think, as a youth was seeing that my first realization that there were people that had so much less than I did. And in particular, I remember those times when I think it was the British broadcasting that brought us the Ethiopian children that were starving. And just that realization that there was such a discrepancy between the, quote, haves and have-nots in terms of vitality and our health and access to food and that kind of thing. So from the early ages, I had a longing, as it were, to be part of a solution that involved healing, involved being nourished, and even kind of started on that path of thinking I would be a nutritionist early on in college, and the only track at the time was dietetics, and that wasn't quite what I had in mind in terms of world hunger. But interestingly enough, after the long journey into policy and thinking that's maybe where I could make the biggest bang for my education, I realized, well, I need to get on the ground floor and need to be in the roots of, what's kind of in the trenches before I can even be valuable in policy. And then that led me back to medicine. So in medicine, I learned a great deal about the human body and just grew a passion for the magnitude and amazement that the awe that came from studying the human body and
I agree.
how it worked. That drove me forward. I was very excited during medical school, and then there was a little lapse, and after that, where I just felt like I lost that contact with the amazing capacity of the human body, and slowly wove back to that place through associating with and learning from folks who had, and I say folks in a down-home sense, the physicians, and some of them quite masterful and maybe even famous, some of them not, who were actually honoring that human body and working with it to resolve health issues, and not coming from a place of antagonism or competition or feeling kind of, as we're immersed in right now, that a fear of something we have to conquer or conquest. Right. That's a very different kind of medicine than what inspired me initially. And I feel like this journey has brought me through that space of a kind of a fearful based medicine where everything's based on responding to a fear as opposed to working in the light of hope. And right. I really appreciate that your radio show that we're on is called Inspiring Hope, and that's really, I think, we're at this tipping point in our medical field where we have to ask ourselves, do we want to continue to react out of fear and let that be the model for how we do medicine, or do we want to go back to those roots of the profound potential of the human body and what it can and does do for us, and really shift our focus to that rather than what is dangerous or fearful, finding the next thing that we have to combat. So I think it's an amazing time. It's an exciting time. We're coming out, like you said, of this cocoon time where we have to decide, are we going to be in that place of what maybe Viktor Frankl called tragic optimism, where you are very conscious of the problems, but still hopeful.
Right. And we have to be aware of what's going on. We have, and I know that I took your class, and it's all about the awareness of what is going on in your body. When you acknowledge if there's something that's going on, that's the first, that's your A, right? Awareness. Right. And then you can say, okay, now what do I need to do to shift my environment, my patterns, my habit in order to help the body to heal. And coming from my old diagnostic ultrasound background, I've long had a fascination with the physical body.
Yeah.
And it's just, to me, it was always amazing to be able, I had the ability to peer inside using, ultrasound to see all of the dynamics and how everything is so interrelated, and how, if people don't breathe, then the liver doesn't get any exercise, the gut doesn't get it's that breathing that keeps everybody inside moving, and that whole dynamic fluidity that needs to happen. So being that observer,
Right.
I'm often in a position of observing in my careers, but observing the body and how it loves to work in tandem with each other. Each piece, each organ, it functionally depends on the guy next to it,
Right.
just like we do as a society. We are all connected, and as we change our patterns, our habits, our thoughts, we affect those around us. So it's the body, the human body, is kind of a microcosm of the all of humanity.
I couldn't say it more perfectly. You said it, and it's so fun, really. It's such a fun exploration to go into the cell, and in a Carl Sagan sense, navigate and explore the landscape there, and then project it to the larger landscape of our universe or
Right.
our planet, and see that everything is kind of, you can study a cell and it tells the whole story.
Absolutely.
Or you can study Earth and it tells the whole story, or that the whole story is in every part, almost like our genetic material. You can find it all in that one little bit of information that's just so tiny, yet there's so much information there. You think from the time you're a child and you put that first, bean in the water in your 5th grade and watch a plant come of that.
Yeah.
Like all that information, if we just, as you said, become aware of what can be possible. And it is true that we live in a time where we're bombarded with information. I was just talking to one of my exchange students. We've had about 9. And I was just speaking to one out of Austria. And we were talking about, in their time, my daughter's generation, how they're bombarded with information, and they've been steeped in that and immersed in that since babydom. And we all haven't been, but how do you sort through information, and how do you recognize what you hold to be true, and how do you find your way, and how do you, people say this all the time as patients, which diet do I choose, which supplement do I choose? And I think one of the things we just, as you said, and I emphasized in the recent course I gave, and I will say I will be giving more in the future on Your Health Matters, because things that matter to your health.
And I highly recommend it to anybody.
Thank you. And it's really to begin by being aware of yourself and aware of your place, and honoring that every message that's coming through, good, bad, or otherwise, to you is just that. Mm-hmm. And rather than fearing it, I appreciate, and I hope you don't mind me saying, I've asked people how they benefited from the course, and one of the things that you offered back to me is something came up that was a condition you'd experienced in the past, but what the class did for you is it allowed you to reframe how you, I'm paraphrasing, I hope correctly, how you perceive that condition, and realized, oh, I know you're talking to me. This, your human body, your own body is telling you something. It's not, it's delivering a message that there's a change, or that it needs attention. It's kind of knocking at your door saying, I need attention here, not, oh dear, I'm crumbling, or is this a precursor for cancer, or is, whatever that is,
Right.
That's always the big scare.
And or the initial thought is, oh no, here it is again.
Right.
It's back.
And
your class, your workshop helped me to say, oh, it's back.
Hello.
What am I doing? What did I do to cause this? Okay, now it makes sense. So it was just sort of like it was like an email.
Yeah.
Hey, you're doing this. Now you can change this. Yeah. And I wanted just to let people who are listening know that you're listening to Inspiring Hope with Lois Hermann, and we're here today speaking with Dr. Heather Tallman Ruhm. and integrative medicine specialist extraordinaire, and I'm looking to have her inspire you with so much that she does to inspire people about paying attention, because their health matters. Your health matters, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really fun to explore people's health with them, and oftentimes people will say, I hear these words so often after they've talked about kind of their life and what's happened over the course of their lifetime, because I really do explore that. And what kind of signs and symptoms, and what does a sign or symptom even mean? An outward sign that someone else might notice, or an inward symptom that you feel yourself. Just identifying those and learning to recognize that that's a friendly, as it were, communication to you from your own body. And as people start to befriend themselves, befriend their own physiology, and they realize that it's working really in collaboration with them. It's not working against them. And so much of kind of what we've come to think as a culture, at least this time we're a little bit stuck in, is to think that darn body of mine, or, oh, here come those stupid allergies, or, oh, sure enough, that ankle's acting up again, or there goes another flare. And really, the body is so intent on healing and being alive that you don't have to even think about taking that breath again the next morning, or you could live in fear and worry about it, but you do wake up again and you say, oh my gosh, the breathing is still going on. I slept through it. I slept through my heart beating. And to acknowledge, if we go back, I think the great hope as I was driving here, I was thinking about a new title for my book that's been underway for the last dozen or so years, and it keeps changing, the title. And I thought, oh, it really should be called Finding Hope, because that's what we need to do for ourselves. And again, as it may be tragic optimism, because we know if we identify and acknowledge the things that aren't working in our bodies or in our lives or in our relationships or in our world, and then we think, oh, what is that a symptom of? If your nose is running, it's not running because it's an angry nose. It's saying, hey, I'm trying to clear you out. Basically your health comes down to what comes into your body, what goes out of it,
and what gets stuck,
and
right?
What doesn't. Exactly. So you want certain things to stay,
Right.
good nourishment and positive thinking and reflection on good things, but you don't want to lose that.
Right.
So you want things to stick in a sense, but not be stuck. You want things to be in flow. So you are a dynamic human body. And I think the hope, as I was driving here, I thought, our lack of hope is a lot like having trauma. Our lack of hope, if you've studied, and you probably have because you're in the work of trauma and helping people even understand trauma that they may not have known they had coming through the birth canal, or some other time, maybe a past genealogy, maybe someone in the family experienced something and it kind of stuck on to their DNA like a burr, and they're still kind of reliving something that they said, where did that come from? I wasn't there at the days of the guillotine, but I sure feel like it,
That's right.
So you're helping them overcome trauma. And I think, excuse me if I misquote, but Peter Levine, I probably say his name wrong, brought to us somatic experiencing the concept of healing through not revisiting or reliving a trauma, but recognizing that time before when we were still in a place of vitality, let's say, and then something shifted to weaken us or make us vulnerable. And really the definition that I took away, maybe this is in my own words, but is trauma is when there is lack of control, a sense of lack of control. So you can have something hit you pretty hard and you never had a sense of loss of control. And that just seems to roll off you like water off a duck's back. But something else might be very small and you don't feel like you have control. Maybe like a child with their parents
Right.
that, have the final say and they don't get to do what they want to do. That's somewhat traumatic. But it's that sense of lack of control. And I feel like right now, one of the things we perpetuate in this kind of place of reacting and acting from fear is a sense of lack of control and uncertainty. And while uncertainty and change are good to be open to, And we also need a sense of control that we can direct or guide ourselves through that. So whether you get a diagnosis, or your child gets a diagnosis of autism, or you get a diagnosis of an arthritis or diabetes or cancer, whatever that is, if you get the news that feels like not such good news to you immediately, like you felt when that old condition came back, then reframe and say, what can I learn? What is the body struggling to try to overcome that I haven't been listening to? And how is it trying to help me?
And what can I do to support it?
And what can I do? And how can I be in that hope? So if tragedy or trauma is in vulnerability and lack of control, then we have to go back to, what can I be in control of? What do I have access to? And really, I feel, at least from my own experience, where I lost hope in medicine is that time where I felt there was lack of anything I could do or give hope to my patients. And then I went through that kind of dark night of the soul, as it were, and came out the other side realizing I just need to go back to the grandeur. And I consciously think this, but I think that's what happened, is I gravitated back toward those that were steeped in the grandeur of the human body and physiology and the planet and the connectedness, as you said. And the people that we're focusing on, as this radio show, I believe, is intended to do, and your book implores us to do. And I read your second book, and I think it's lovely. And it implores us with those wonderful messages of the past that are redundant or resaid and restated in many beautiful, eloquent ways by many spiritual leaders throughout time, is what we have in common, what we can acknowledge and be grateful for, even amidst the tragedies of the time and the tragedies of our own body, and how we can re-embrace. So it's not so much making something great again, but it's respecting what is good and what is great already, and then wallowing in that, wallowing in the potential of a people and races that actually have all these things in common. It's what we have in common. And I was speaking with one of my family members yesterday who's a professor here in New Hampshire, and talking about what feels like, from her perspective, and she's trying to help young people really feel their own kind of role and responsibility and some control about how they can give back in a time when there needs a lot of giving back, And she felt, maybe the thing that we're lacking, or feels like it in our youth, and not just our youth, but in our culture, and that we're not fostering in our own children, is empathy. And I think that in order to have empathy, and maybe this is getting philosophical, and I tend to, it's how do we acknowledge what we're grateful for?
Absolutely.
And how do we forgive where we've erred? And how do we, I think it was, I was going to say Lily Tomlin, but she's got a great quote too. It was Maya Angelou, I think, who said, and thank you, my medical assistant reminded me of this beautiful quote the other day, and I'll try to get it right. She said, "Do your best until you know better, then do better." And how do we know better? We know better by acknowledging what works. We know better by finding humanity in what we share in common, whether it's with a child who is struggling with autism, or whether it is somebody who is in a completely different place than you are politically, or political inclination. Where, if there is anger, if there is hatred, if there is unbridled, as you I learned in your book the way it was described, this kind of hatred or anger that doesn't have direction, then it's going to be co-opted. It's going to be taken someplace that doesn't have a positive outcome. So get in touch with what it is where that your own source of unrest or dis-ease or anger or hatred. Get a feel for, where does that come from? Does it come from a place of feeling isolated, not feeling part of feeling rejected, of feeling not in control of your own physiology, let alone your family and your environment? Get back to what's working already in your own body, in your own environment, in the people around you, and shut your eyes to the blind yourself, as it were. Cover up the things that are impacting you from old biases.
Mm-hmm. And anger is an important emotion. Many people stifle the anger, and then it comes out in physical symptoms. What I encourage with my hypnosis-based practice is to get, where is the root? Where did the anger come from? Once you understand the anger and you diffuse it, let it go, explode it, release it. Then with that understanding and that knowing, now you can make the change. It's when you just have, as you were saying, the unbridled, this anger that comes from, I don't know where it comes from, but we're just releasing it. That's not constructive. Use anger. All of our emotions are there for a reason. But when we go into them and truly understand, where does this come from? We get that understanding, and then we practice the forgiveness, practice the the awareness, then even with the emotional shifts, then we can shift. And then the body responds because it dovetails with our emotions.
Yes, beautifully said. I think you reminded me of what I learned from internal family systems, a way of approaching your traumas or other psychological kind of webs that you are stuck in. And the beauty of what I gleaned from that, or maybe again it's my own paraphrase, but it's that if you stop and say, where is that voice? And you even name the voice. Maybe that's, that was my great Aunt Martha, and she told me I could never add up to anything, or whatever that is, whatever that old voice is. And I'm sorry, Martha. But anyway, or maybe that, whatever that voice is, and you just identify it and you realize that it was there to serve you. Mm-hmm. And you say, how was it there to serve me in the past? Because I needed to be motivated, because I had to acknowledge, or else I got beat up. I had to acknowledge that voice and then live with it and carry it. Whatever it was, that you held that voice. So acknowledge that voice and call it Aunt Martha's, or just say, that's that voice that tells me I'm not good enough, I've never been on time, I am a procrastinator, I'm too obese, I overeat, whatever you do that, you're kind of beating yourself up for, and say, where is that voice that tells me I'm bad or I'm wrong? And how is it helping me at some point? Maybe it motivated you when you needed it at age 3, when you didn't have any other tools to motivate you, whatever it was. But come to that voice with a sense of curiosity and ask it, whether it's anger, pain, hurt, hatred, how are you helping me? And then that's acknowledgement. That's that first step I said.
Absolutely.
Acknowledging the voice, the belief, whatever that is, and say, how is that helping me? Or how did it perceive to be helping me in the past? How are you helping me? Kind of acknowledge it as an entity, as it were. And then say, thank you. I don't need you anymore.
Or what can we do to soften it?
Or yes.
How can we change it to a different, because in that, you and I both talk about power versus force and the whole hierarchy of emotions. And we can't go from fear to joy like that. We can shift it in slight increments. So how can we shift this to be a little bit more constructive, and then a little bit more constructive, and then so we're taking incremental steps so that we don't go from from complete paralyzing guilt to enlightenment overnight. It is a process.
Yes.
So it's a process of understanding, acknowledging, and subtle little shifts along the way.
I think that's, I really hoped we'd get to that concept today, because so often we feel like it's just overwhelming to think of changing, and, people say, oh, should I join the gym this year finally, January, this is the time, whatever. And I gave a t-shirt to a friend once, and it said, peace is not a big thing. It's a million little things. And really, it's just pick one of those million little things. And that's a shift, just a little shift. If you haven't been in your body moving, let's say you like to dance or love to dance in the past, then before you brush your teeth, dance, put on one song before you brush your teeth in the morning or before you go to bed, and remind your body again that you're in it, that you can express with it, that it's serving you, and whatever that means. If you are in a wheelchair, there's a different kind of dance than if you have legs that can walk or move. You can even visualize that. Wherever you are in your lowest place, begin with a small visualization, if not the action, and tie it to something that's already a little habit. Now, we do brush our teeth. I know I used that in the workshop, but I thought that works. I understand Lyndon B. Johnson gave everyone toothbrush as a gift so that they would think of him in the morning and at night.
Really?
That may not be true, but maybe in a different president. Anyway, that's what so what it is that you already acknowledge something that you do you wouldn't be here if you weren't doing some good habit.
Yes.
Right? No matter how bad you feel you are or how bad you have been, there's something you're doing for the good of you and for the good of others. And it's a small thing that will make the big differences over time.
Exactly. Incremental steps.
And
Love
it's
it.
something you can stick with.
Yeah.
It's not rather than finding the one thing, the big thing that's going to change your life, or whether it's a supplement or a workshop, hopefully mine. Maybe that is the big thing.
Yes.
Do a big thing that will help you with your little things.
And it's in doing those big things that you find out all the little things that made a difference along the way.
Right.
I just wanted to remind our listeners that you're listening to Inspiring Hope with Lois Hermann, and I'm here with Dr. Heather, and we're talking about incremental change in our health and in our world. And I know one of the big things that that I'm in the process of completing is book 2 in a series, and one of the things that was asked to me was, why were you chosen to deliver this message? And I'm like, who, me? I truly feel like Frodo with the Ring of Power. I have no idea. But as I started looking at the incremental steps in my journey, it's like, oh, well, I've had this, and I've had this experience, I've had this, so that there's so many pieces in that incremental growth that allows me to totally understand and be in a position to deliver these messages. So there are little things that
add up,
accumulated
right,
to the point where I can create this book series, and it's a lot of work.
It's work, and I think you hit on something really important for all of us. I think, and you get that sense of, we come for this, or we at least are immersed in this kind of puritanical, do for yourself in a way of taking care of yourself, but then we lost kind of the taking care of yourself. And in that, I think we also lost the sense that you have value in your own right. And if you look at each of us as a snowflake, right?
Yes.
We are all different,
We so
from
are.
our thumbprint to our experience, and how we experience and then how we express is our authenticity. And everybody has their own. And so you have a gift, and I know that from reading your 2 books. I know that that's your gift, is your gift to offer that. And it may seem self-aggrandizing to bring attention to the fact that you wrote a book, or that you had this, you were the special person to deliver a message. I think we fight against that, not wanting to toot our own horn, so to speak.
Exactly.
At the same time, we are, and it would be very kind of insincere in a way not to acknowledge. It is truly, it's insincerity not to acknowledge our own authenticity, that we are a unique experience and collection of experiences, and we are a unique expression of that. And the thing we have more control of, again, getting back to taking us out of the vulnerability of our experience, is how we take what may be a mess and turn it into something magnificent, or how we take experience and turn it into a beautiful expression, how we take our pile of compost or manure that we all are in our own right, in our own way, in our own little collection of experiences, and manifest something that is enriching to ourselves and those around us. So I want us as a culture to get beyond the fear of being judged as self-righteous or special or above others by expressing our own authenticity. And maybe it's sometimes in the form of disagreement or having a different opinion or seeing things through a different lens and not being able to articulate that to others. That's okay if we acknowledge our own lens and just work with each other in a way that acknowledges the beauty and authenticity in the lens of another.
And that's one of the things that I feel like I enjoy doing, is helping people to find their lens.
Yes.
To take all of the different pieces to their stew, because if we were to be in a room together and we each made a stew, we'd make it a little bit different. Or chili. If you ever been to a chili cook-off, and there's like 20 different types of chili, but it's all chili. So each of us has our own recipes within us. And one of the things that I love to do is help people to look within and see their strengths, see their gifts, and to put them out in the world, because this world right now needs each person to step into that authentic power for their own unique gifts.
Right.
This is about showing up and bringing my gifts, because my gifts are different than your gifts, than someone else's gifts. But if we each bring our own unique gifts, then, and I use this as a metaphor, then we weave our thread in the fabric of humanity. We need each person to stand up and express their unique gifts, because we need each other.
Absolutely. And I just got lost in your words. I was thinking about how it's listening, and that's what I got lost in just that moment, is listening to you. And I think I love to speak, I love to teach. It's in my power, my strength to be able to do that, and not everybody feels comfortable in that form and in that light. And so I'm grateful for that ease and comfort. But it's in the listening, whether it's to ourselves or each other, and I think that makes the difference. Once you listen to your fellow man or listen to someone's individual story, then you regain what I was having that conversation with my family member and colleague. You regain empathy, you regain understanding, you gain an appreciation for your human form, you gain an appreciation for others' perspectives or where they're coming from a place of hardship or their own experiences. And you had asked me before this show who were my mentors, and the first thing I said without thinking, which was fine, it was right, it was real from my heart, was the mentors have been those who believed in me. Yes. And then you turned around and asked me, well, then what do you have that you offer to your patients or people in your life or your students? And I realized it was a belief in them.
Exactly.
And I think if we start to dwell in our strengths more than our vulnerabilities, and even seeing our vulnerabilities as part of our strength, that we have been vulnerable, and that vulnerability took us through something, that we learned how we could find resourcefulness. So when I pondered that question after our conversation, I thought, oh, gee, I've left out my parents. They've been an amazing inspiration to me, and they were my mentors, my first mentors, of course, and they still are. And I don't know what they would expect if they were listening for me to say about how they mentored me. And I think there were all kinds of good ways, and set examples of being in nature and eating well and exercising and still loving life in their 80s. Oh yes, I can tell them they're in there, so just that's been an inspiration. But what I think I've taken more pride in, and what I do think that they brought me, and what I can bring back in the same way I can believe in either myself or those who believed in me, gave me strength and hope, and how I can turn and give strength and hope to others, is they taught me resourcefulness. Mm-hmm. However that is, that if there is a perceived problem, that there is a possible solution. And I think they both embody that in their life and in their vitalness, is when we didn't have much. There were times when we financially, as a family of 6, had no paycheck coming for a couple days, and my mother said, how am I going to feed you? And she thought, oh, I've got some bacon grease and some Bisquick.
Right.
I can make biscuits and gravy. And so she did for one night, and then she thought, oh my gosh, what'll I do? I have one more night to feed this hungry family of 6, and I don't have anything else because the paycheck won't be in. And then the kids clamored for more of that delicious thing we had last night, and it solved the problem.
Right.
So even if we aren't solving the problem immediately, if we live in a space of being resourceful and problem solving and thinking not of the problems as a problem that's drawing us down and taking us to a stuck place, but the problem as, oh my gosh, is this rich soil for a solution? It's kind of like finding the perfect spice to just make that soup or chili that much better than it was before, or realizing the last time you made that soup you didn't do it well, and now that you know better, you're going to add that little key ingredient to do better with your chili competition this time.
Like
So,
Maya Angelou's comment.
quote, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So what do you encourage people to do to stay inspired and positive?
Well, one of the things is individualizing, because there's not one thing for everybody. As I've probably said to you before, you're a hypnotist, and that brings people into a space and place where they can heal from a lens and kind of a relaxation of not having a guard up to protect themselves, which is what our bodies are designed to do, protect us. And I know that wouldn't inspire everybody. And maybe even some people will have kind of an old stigma attached to hypnotism. I mean, I grew up with a guy that came to town and made my sister eat an onion and and turn into a board that people could walk across. That was my idea of hypnotism.
Oh, yeah.
So, someone who has that idea of it, now I don't have that idea anymore because I've since interviewed hypnotists and found the value in that. But is finding those modalities, and I think that's the beauty of integrative medicine. And I just listened to a beautiful presentation from the Bioregulatory Medical Institute, BRMI, on cerebral spinal fluid from a gentleman who did his dissertation, his PhD, all of his PhD work on cerebrospinal fluid, and what that role that plays in the human body. And so to me, it just excited me and enlightened me about loving and caring for that aspect of the human frame. And I think finding for individuals, as I meet with them, those things that help you change your own human frame or acknowledge the beauty in it in ways that you hadn't before is what, in ways that make sense to people. So I help people make sense of where they are and where they might go. And I think that's providing that hope and belief in them. So little things that we can all do is focus on what's already happening without our intervention, like our breathing and our movement and moving in ways that nourish our body. And just identifying or learning a little bit about your own physiology or anatomy. Just read a little bit of an article that says, oh, I didn't know that tendons, or I didn't know that my liver, I didn't know I had 2 kidneys, as one of my colleagues said when we were in medical school. I just learned that in our class today, that we have 2 kidneys, not one, So
Oh, yeah.
we all learn at some point in life,
Yeah.
even if you're halfway through medical school and you discover you have 2 kidneys. So learn something to appreciate about yourself. And so by really delving into other people's histories and looking at patterns, which I love to do, what is that web of patterning? So how are you connecting with yourself? How are you connecting with people around you? How are you connecting with earth and nature? How are you connecting with creativity? Where do you have creativeness in your life? Where are you creative in moving your body or moving your paintbrush or moving your words or moving your poetry or moving your plants around in your, spreading seeds? Where is that creativity? Touch base with your creative juices. Touch base with your breath. One of the things that I learned that I didn't know, and now I'm driving down the road this morning thinking breathing in a completely new light, and I've taught about breathing. I'm a yoga instructor of many kinds of yoga, and even in my Christian faith, there's breath and the breath of life, So I'm driving down the road today thinking of this graph that was presented by the gentleman who studied CSF, the cerebrospinal fluid. And I learned that they've studied because we can now, all these amazing things about the inner workings of the body, that as you inhale, your cerebral spinal fluid goes all the way up and bathes your brain. It fills your brain and all the ventricles, including what we call the third eye, which is the third ventricle. Literally, it's a place where you store that cerebral spinal fluid right in the middle of your pituitary, your pineal, your hypothalamus, and your thalamus gland. And so it's this bath water that literally comes from, it's seawater, essentially, one molecule away from seawater. And as we breathe in, it comes all the way up and bathes our brain and fills those ventricles. And then as we exhale, it goes all the way down to our sacrum, even below the cerebrospinal column, because the cerebrospinal column is bathed in that. And it comes originally from the amniotic fluid that invaginates into the human as they're formed and becomes one with them. So the very seawater from which we emanated wherever and whenever we did, if you want to start with the amniotic fluid or you want to go further back,
Right.
it's become one internally with us, and it serves to create energy and healing power, and it serves as literally the environment that provides information as a template for our stem cells to become grown up, in particular our neurologic system. Now, why am I telling you that today? Because I learned that yesterday.
And you know, this dovetails in with what I was talking about as you're talking about taking that breath in. I know, and I teach deep breathing for relaxation and stress reduction, but this is that investigative part of me. I can see the whole difference in internal pressure. When you take in a deep breath, you're putting pressure on the nerves and the actual spinal column, which would push the cerebrospinal fluid up into the ventricles. I mean, I'm visualizing
Yes.
that it actually pushes it up, and then when you release the breath, it allows that to flow.
Down.
Gravity will
Yes.
allow it to flow, and so this is one of the things that I love about your teachings. I'm good at having a base knowing, but my brain wants to know why. I want to understand it, and then when I understand it, it actually feeds to me wanting to do better. It's that whole, now that I know better, now I can do better.
Well, you just gave another tool to people. I don't know how much time we have, but
Only a
the
few
why,
minutes.
the
Yes.
why. And I think someone did and wrote a book about it, and I'm sorry, I'm not giving credit where credit's due to the names of the people that I'm referencing here, about the importance of why, and kind of taking that 3-year-old, being a 3-year-old,
Yes.
that kind of mentality of asking why for things. And I'm taking a course right now on how to get my work out there in the virtual world and in these workshops. And one of the exercises was the asking of why. And so you ask, why do you want to be on Lois Hermann's radio show? And I think because it's inspiring hope. It's the very word of it. Also, I have a respect for Lois, and I've just read her book, and I'm interested and intrigued with what she is promoting in the world and hope. And I align with that, and I resonate with hope and bringing hope. And I don't believe there is such a thing as false hope. It's kind of like pregnancy. You are or you aren't. You either have hope or you don't, Yeah. And then I can ask, well, why do I feel aligned with that? And then I think, well, because of everything I've learned that is hopeful about our human anatomy and physiology and this planet and how it provides for us. It provides for the birds and the bees, and they don't have to work the way we do or do the 9-to-5 shift. They do their own kind of shift, but it all provides, and the body's providing. And if it's moaning or groaning or it's in sorrow, why? And let's listen. So that's why that I resonate with that. Well, why do you resonate? Why do those things resonate with you? Well, because I think I've seen that that's what's in a healing space for my patients. I've seen when they haven't been in that place of gratitude or honoring what works, and when they're fighting it or they're taking an anti this or an anti that or an anti you name the drug, it's a competition. So I relate to that kind of being part of what's working for us, not against us.
Yes.
As Mother Teresa said, I only march for something. I never march
For
against.
peace. Never against war.
Yeah, I never work.
Yeah.
So So why does that resonate? Well, and when you just keep asking the why, it's kind of like that voice of curiosity. Why do I have that voice that tells me I should be shamed or whatever? And then you say you can let it go, and then it comes to another voice, and then you ask that voice, and then you can work with that, like you said, to take one step in a different direction, or reframe it, like, oh, I see how you could take that as shame, but it doesn't have to be, and you reframe it. So how do you take those little increments? And the person that I learned from Internal Family Systems may have been even the founder reading about that storyline, is what he said is the profoundness of being in the room with somebody who he kept asking that question, the why then why that, then why this. It wasn't analysis through paralysis or analysis, but it got to the point where there was this little voice, and he said, whose voice is that? Mm-hmm. And the voice said, it was very kind and compassionate and empathetic and thoughtful. And he said, well, what voice is that? Is it Aunt Martha? And they would always say, they look at him perplexed, and they'd say, well, it's me. Mm-hmm. So it's like the Eckhart Tolle says, at the core of us, even the mass murderer, there's this innocent flame of there's a flame of innocence.
Absolutely.
And a flame of connection.
Of light within everyone.
And there's the seawater we all share.
Thank you so much, Dr. Heather, for being with me. We're going to have you back on, because we only talked about A in your...
Book A.
in your 7-point, A through H, right?
Right.
Yeah.
My book is really focuses on the 8 underlying what I think are causes.
That's right, it is 8.
Yes, the 8. The first is awareness, but you got that right. And then there are 7 more really foundational things. It's not pointing a finger at anybody or group or industry.
And how do people find you? We're going to wrap this up now, I'm
sure. As of now, and there will be more, because I've got a couple websites I'm working on. One working on an old one that needs to be refreshed and updated. But the current one that's probably most helpful is nhhealthwellness.com.
She's a new partner at New Hampshire Health and Wellness Center.
Right.
So welcome, Dr. Heather.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with me today, and I know that there's going to be more time. So you've been listening to Inspiring Hope with Lois Hermann. Until next week, look up, stay positive, and be the light in someone's day. Thank you.
Thank you.
WSMN 1590, Nashua's source for news and talk.
USA Radio News with Chris Barnes.
2 people are dead, at least 8 other people wounded in a nightclub shooting in South Carolina. The Greenville sheriff's deputies say happened at about 2 a.m. So far, no arrests have been reported, and the investigation's continuing. President Trump speaking at last night's Salute to America celebration outside the White House. He was angered by those who want to erase the nation.